Group project. How are we doing? Are you guys happy or unhappy with the group project's progress so far? I count 1, 2, 3. If you're happy, you do this. If you're not happy, you do this. Can we try? Hey, we've started. 1, 2, 3. Not happy, not happy. I can't see your hands. If you're happy, you do this, and you're not happy, you do this. About the group projects. Yeah. So what can be better?
I think we make a mistake in manage the time together and we don't synchronize. Then happened that we was working in the same team. Then we lose time and later we just disconnect and we lose a lot of time.
Yeah. So planning. That's a good point. Hey, do you think that will get better this week?
We lose a lot of time. I think we need to sacrifice some things what we was planning to do in order to deliver a functional.
Okay. Anything else that you guys share that is good to share with the class? Some of you are happy, right? The progress goes as wanted. You're still happy about the idea? Please join the Slack channel here for me to take attendance. For those of you who are new, I will be very strict. I count the number of times you miss class. So here's the Slack channel. All right. So group project, all the best, guys. Anything that you feel stuck about planning, about some topics. Some of you already do a few new cool things. Play with video, play with accelerometer. So we'll see. And some of you go very far by trying something very new. It's really up to you. That's your own risk, right? So today the chapter is strictly about I can give you guys more time later, but so today I respect your time, so I'm trying to share what's useful. So please try to contribute to the lecture. All right. Today the focus is on persistence. The reason why is on week 7 is that it's no longer that hard to do with persistence. I'm sure some of you already started. It's no longer very difficult. It also no longer as important because you can use parse and other tools. You save things online. You use a data API calls. Now that's it. This lecture I hope it will be very useful. For any of you who do iOS, it's good to think and plan and understand the persistence layer, which is always an important layer. So far, who have used NS user defaults? Raise your hands. Not yet? Where have you been? Have you used NS user defaults in your homework? Then raise your hands there. Come on, we have some energy, right? Who here has used some other files in your file system? Raise your hands. Have you used any other files? Have you accessed any file at all? Yeah? So you save something to file. So that's file system. Who here uses SQLite before? No? So that would be interesting to. And then who here has written core data stuff before? Have you? No? Okay. Cool. Well, to save data for complex data types, right? There's something called serialization. And we probably are familiar with this now. JSON is one of the ways to serialize. So Java, you have this module, right? It's serializable. And we have this in iOS. It's called NS coding protocol. And it's a way to tell iOS how to encode your data from regular text to binary. And it's very interesting. Guaranteed in this lecture, it's still very interesting. So remember these methods we've seen before? You have the regular init method with no argument, or class, right? You just, a new UI view, right? You just do a UI view, open paren, close paren. But then you also see something called coder, and we haven't used it, so we'll use it today. And what is interesting is you have to for complex objects, you have to declare and encode with coder. We see how we do that to break down, to tell you how to serialize a complex one by serializing the smaller ones. Now, when you serialize, well, iOS know how to serialize all this stuff, and it's data, string, number, and all this type, right? Integer, bool. But then you have to serialize some more complicated types. Now, but after you serialize, where do you store? So far we only consume the API, means we read from JSON, right? The movie database. So we read it, and it's how do you use it? NS JSON serialization, blah blah, right? But you never write it back, right? So one way to write it back is to use NS user default. But if you write a complicated structure, it's just a class, a list of movie, right? We have to do it ourselves. If you use NS dictionary, that's okay, it will work. So let's try that. It will look something like this. So if you can get your NS user defaults, and then you can save it as an object. It can be anything, string or more complex type. You can call default synchronize so that it updates that across all threads. If you don't, it will get called at the lifecycle of the controller at the end. But you can. It's good practice. Just call it if you make any changes, right? Of course, that if you make a ton of changes, you don't want to call it each time. You want to call it at the end. So you can get the data back by using object for key. So it's very common in iOS. I think you use NS dictionary so far. You use there's a value for path, right? An object for path. And if you use Swift dictionary class, then you can just use the square brackets. So we'll try to write something like this. Right now the code doesn't make sense, and then we'll do it together, so then it will make sense. Let's jump straight to a project demo, right? So I take the homework 1. I just recreated what you did in homework 1, right? Assignment here. We know that there's in this API call, and we get this result. You guys can see, right? It's not too small. Result. So I created a project. There's not much in this project except that it's a table view, right? And then I basically load the latest movies. Exciting! Now you know what movie is being shown compared to last time, right? Jungle Book is a very new movie right now. So let's say in controller, very quickly, right? This table view, I already set it up. I used table view as delegate and data source. And if I go to view controller, here's what I have. In homework 1, you use NS dictionary. In this homework, from now on, of course, you don't want to use that. We've talked about it already. Create your own movie file, right? Great. So I've written a lot of code in here. But I'm going to comment it out, and then we'll do it again, right, so I can show you quickly. So first, what we want to try is to save data, right? So what I'm doing is I load and I get the data from the JSON API, and I turn off the internet, and then I load it again, and it should work. Let's try all the different things this can. We can make this happen. You ready? Let's comment out. We just have an empty controller. I'm just going to comment out everything. And then if we stuck, we can cheat, right? Look at these guys. So even this, I think that's enough. So I have this basically a table view. Whoops. So the first way to do is to use NS session. I'll fetch a movie using here's the method that I'm getting. I'm doing this so that it's faster for us to read. All right, and I'll explain. I'll have a method called fetch movie, right? whoops, this one. Okay, so let's read this fetch movie. Basically, I get the client ID, the URL, there's nothing special here. So, session. A lot of you use Anomofire, but bear with me, this is important, right? So, to understand. So I'm getting the session using the default configuration here, an NS URL request. So I'm going to build this. Let's see, not getting any data. We'll do something simple here. Get data with request, pass the request in. After you have the request, then what do you do? Store it, right? So how do I store these guys? Okay, how do I store them? I'm just going to print load data, right? Loaded data, and this is my data. Okay, so it's empty for now. Well, this is when you get a network error. So actually, for now, I just remove everything here. If there's an error, I just return. That makes sense, right? With the guard statement. If there is no error, I serialize it with JSON, right? And then basically, I have the movies array as movies, and each one of them, now I just add that to my list of movies, and I load the table. Does it make sense? And we have to implement our this one right here. It's nothing crazy, list of movies, and for each movie we just set it in the movie cell. Let's try to run this. All right. So it's not loading. Let's first try to figure out why this is not working. Right? We don't have viewDidLoad. Load. So I have right, and then I'll just call fetch movies. Right now, actually, this function, I have nothing. So that's fetch movies. Let's fetch it. All right. I fetch movie with NS session. What happens if I turn off the internet? So one way for you to do at home, if you do the video app, this will be useful for you. Has anyone of you tried doing this? Like turn off internet, try to run it again? I think one group's doing video, right? Well, this is a lot of work. There's another way is to go to Xcode, open developer tool, more developer tools, and from here you find, as you work on iOS more, you find more things to use. But what I recommend is here, Hardware IO Tool 4, this one, Xcode, the latest one, and you download the DMG. After you download it, you drag it into your system preferences. So after you download it, you have this file, a bunch of them, a bunch of hardware tools. This is quite useful for you to do like, and in here there's a thing that I already installed. So after installing, it comes up, it's here, network link conditioner. Has anyone used network link conditioner here? No, right? Cool, so that's something new today, right? Drag this in here, and I have this. So this one is super awesome. You see that I can decide what internet I have. So this means no DNS delay, and this is maximum bandwidth. And let's say right now I run this app, so I don't have to disconnect and reconnect to the Wi-Fi. Someone joined Wi-Fi and then I can't join. That's sad, right? So this is the code I have running with Wi-Fi. Now I turn this on, but then I say package loss. Everything is lost. All right, and then I built this again. Obviously, if you want to learn it, you can create a button, so you don't have to build it again. But I didn't have enough time. Now, when I build it again, I have nothing. All right, so let's make it work. Let's make it work with something. This is happening here. You basically say error loading. Right? Please ask questions, right? Like, I want you to find some interesting areas to ask questions. So if I print this here, obviously there's an error with the internet. So what's cool here, I use request, and you see that in this request you have a cache policy. If there's a shorter way to do data, you can actually do, instead of this let task, you do session.data. These are your data method. The easiest way is this one. You see, it's not even a callback. It's just run it. And a lot of time we like to do it in a callback. So when we have the data, you refresh your table. So this is what you use much more often, right? With URL, unless you use Alamo Fire, right? So I like using this guy. So it's very simple, same idea. I just pass in the URL, completion handler, and all of that. It's the same. So basically, it looks exactly like this guy. So I'm just gonna, okay, let's just type it. Data, response, error. So I comment this out. I don't need request. I comment this out. So basically, let's say if I use data with URL, okay, my internet is still off. Do you see that? My internet is still 100% lost, but I have this whole thing back immediately. What happened? The URL is the option that used cache built in. Now request, go back to this guy. If I use this, I'm using request. Now here is where you specify the cache policy. Reload ignoring local cache data. So that's when I say don't use cache, guys. Reload ignoring local cache, right? Cache policy. Okay. I really need this autocomplete to be better. We want it to be just, okay, only these guys. And it's request cache policy. So you can say return cache data, don't load, right? It means if there's cache, use cache. If there's no cache, load from URL. Right? What I did earlier is that don't use cache. So this is a good option, right? But then this also, the difference between these guys is that there's an expiration date. Okay, you can return cache, else load. It means if the cache is still valid, then load. This is more useful than this. This is just like, what if your cache change over time? You want to invalidate it, right? So there are a few options here, but it's just important to know. When you don't want to include so many things like external tools, this is good enough. I'm showing you it's good enough because let's say so cache, for example, now we use reload data else load, right? And timeout intervals is another cool thing, right? Here's you actually want, for example, here I actually want cache first, and then if there's timeout, then I load from cache. Oh, sorry, internet first. So I think there's an option in there. Do we see it? There's an option. So I need a way to find to do just ns URL cache policy, and then and then find that gap. I forgot what it is. All right. Now this session is quite useful. It's quite powerful. So if I just look at this data with URL, you've done it. Data with request, you've done it. You can even do download. You can download files, right? This up here is just for regular, like some smaller requests, but you can do download, and then you can have, what do you have? The difference between download and just do a URL up here. In download, you can have a percentage of your current download, the status, so you can build animation if you want, right? Show the user. So download, upload, and a bunch of cool things. Now, do you notice that all my images also load very quickly? What is the trick we use to load the images? And now first, is anyone still using AF networking? No? So if you use, of course, if you use Atomofire, you have Atomofire image, or there's a Henneke and a few other. Now, I didn't do anything. This is just an Xcode project. I don't use Workspace. So how did I get the, it's useful just to show, okay, let's put this back. I go to movie cell. Right, this is super easy. I have the path, right? And I use ns URL session. Load the image myself. So I use, there's a shorter way. You can use share session. The session is created for you so you use the same session for all the images. And then I use ns data task with URL. I know there's cache involved. And then basically I just tell the main thread to update with the image data. See? So we didn't cover this in lecture 1, right? Lecture 1, what did we do? We're like poster view dot set image with URL, and then you have to include this huge AF networking library, right? Again, you can use it with Atomofire image, or there's a Henneke library as well. Okay, well, that's fine. It's stored in the cache somewhere, but where is it stored? So now, does anyone know? Where's the data stored? So I'm introducing the next thing is to tell us where we are storing the data. Let's include, I have one class. It's called Data Manager. All right, in this Data Manager, I have one function. Ignore everything else, okay? It's called search path, blah, blah, blah. And this is very simple. Every time you do your project, you can just drop this in. So it means after I do view did load, I can print. Okay, let's print it at the end. Print Data Manager, hello, data file. And let me print this. Okay, what's happening here? I need to put a cache policy, right? Okay, so let's do this. I'm printing the path to my app in the simulator. So this is very useful. It's so hard to find, right? You can actually go to library, developer, core simulator, devices, and then you sort by date, time, and then you find it, right? But this is the fastest way for you to find it. So I copy this over here. There are two ways. Go to Finder, Command-Shift-G, copy and paste, enter. So this is your document. This is your app doc folder, right? Under documents, and then it's always empty in here. So notice this crazy path is for this device, right? So that's it. So you can sort it by date modify and you can find it here. That's quite crazy. But in here, you have temp and cache. And we'll explain exactly what each one of these are. All right. So back to the slides. Your cheat sheet is here. Let me try to find that code here. So your documents folder, right? Where the files are. So there are two ways to do this. If you use this URL for the difference between when you do search this guy, Apple will say use this guy, and it's not really there's no real difference. So it's really your preference. But let me just show it real quick. Data Manager. Right. If you have a big screen, this is recommended. Keep this over here, this question mark here. So if I go to the function, I click on this, right? And it will tell me you should consider using the file manager method. And it's like, okay, fine. If you really like using that one, then this one is the method. And the difference is that the first method return just /user/home like this. The other method is more URL compatible. So it actually returns file // the path to your file. So that's the difference. All right. Now, okay, well, we return to this documents folder later. So back to NS user defaults. Where is NS user default stored? It's in here. It's in this thing called library, preferences, and it's the name of your app .plist. What does plist tell you? What format is that? Huh? XML, yeah? Right, and it just means it's not a binary file, it's a text file. So let's do the first method. So I'm enhancing our app right here. We're building a very complicated app that can load data from different ways. So I'm changing this fetch movie method to use something called, I call type. So I already create data, I think storage. I have a method over here. Where is it? Data manager. All right, I have this data storage type, okay? And we're going to implement it for each of this. This is better than your if-else condition, so we'll see if this works. So type, this will be, let's improve the signature down here. Type, data storage type, and down here I pass in a thing called, what type is it? NS user default. So this is an enum type. You can do it whatever ways you want. This is better than writing it by string, right? So I'm calling NS fetch movies this way, this type, and it means over here, if there's an error, all right, let's go to no cache. Stop me if it doesn't make sense, okay? There's a don't cache, okay, return cache, don't load, right? Wait, which one did we have initially? I want to be, okay, return cache, don't load. Yeah, that's good. It means, okay, if the URL is a problem, no, don't cache. I forgot what the option was. Let's check it down here. Our cheat sheet. Reload ignoring local cache. I force it to use my own cache, not using the NS URL request cache, okay? Reload, don't cache, ignoring local cache data. All right, one more time. This preference tool say, right, network link conditioner say, let's not use the internet. I still have no internet. And if I put this here and I load, obviously it will not give me anything. So let's see, right? I have nothing. So it means when this error loading happens, let's load the data. Okay? So we have to build something called load data. And I'm implementing a function called load data. Func load data. But I'm going to support a lot of type. So let's do a switch statement. Data storage type. Case. If it's NS user default, why is it not completing for me? Huh? Switch type, case, thank you. NS user default, then we're going to load things from NS user default, okay? So load from NS user default. Okay, so else, default option, right? This will be like unknown load data of type. Whoops. That seems okay. Now I need to find a way to save data. So, yeah. Save data type, same thing. Let's copy this and put it down here. Whoops, what happened? Save data. Okay. All right, let's save data. So what do we need to save? Well, we save the movies object. Okay. So this. So we have movies. When do we save, guys? When do we call save data? When you load successfully for the first time, right? Down here. After you're able to, let's save. So we call save data, and then the same type as this fetch method. That sounds good, right? And why is it complaining? Right, okay, self-save data. And let's go to this save data method. So, it's a note from my slides. This is the way we do it. We store it by setting the value to NS user default. So let's say I have default equals NS user default. NS, why is it not completing? Oh, let NS user default dot. We always just use this guy. In the past, how do you store things? Defaults dot set. Set what? Set value. Yeah, and then you can pass what you want to set. In this case, it's good for set value is good for NS dictionary stuff. So for our object, we have to use set object, and we're going to pass in our movies, and then we say this is now playing movies. Make sense? And then we say synchronize. Great. Well, this is not going to work yet. Let's just save a simple, I'm going to cheat by saving NS dictionary, okay? This movie array thing, let's do this self.movies array, vars movies array, NS dictionary. That seems okay, right? Yeah, it's optional, so is that fine? So basically, I'm going to store this first because it doesn't work with movies yet. So let's store it, and then when you load, let's store it first, okay? So let's run this. Okay. Load. There's one more. All right. Movies array. All right. So that's a list of dictionary, NS dictionary, and I need internet now because my cache doesn't know anything, right? So go to this. I only try between no network and network, but if you have a video app, you probably want to try something in between, like bad network, where it will drop your package, in between. That's a good way to test. Right, so boom, it load and it saved to NS user defaults. Let's go and see where the data is. You can copy this folder. Again, the methods shared on the slide. And I go here and I'm going to open this guy. Okay? So open this with Xcode. Right. Ignore this movie key. That's from earlier. I would make this disappear by going here, simulator, reset content. Should have done that, right? If this confuses you, I'm just going to remove. What I just did here is now playing. Look at this. It's awesome. All your data is in here. It's almost like you have a copy of your database, right? But except that this is a text file. So that's cool. So it has NS dictionary, and you see it's nested structure. It's just like NoSQL stuff. That's cool. It's like saving to parse or realm, but it's very slow, right? This is just a text file. It had to read the whole thing. All right, but I don't want to use this movies array, right? I want to store my thing with movies, okay? And I'm going to save it. Let's say I want to do that. So the problem with that is it will crash and say, I don't know how to serialize your data. Right? What does it say? Terminate due to uncaught exception, and it's all this crazy stuff. So it says these movies. All right. So how do we make that happen? Well, I've implemented this method. You can actually call it cheat over here, save data. We call data manager dot save to NS user defaults. I pass in the movies. Okay. And how did I implement this method? All right. I use a static method because this basically just your we're using some it's like you can view it as a singleton, but I just have a class with a few class methods. It's an easy way to group these functions related to data management. Okay. Does anyone know the difference between static and class keyword instead of in front of func. If you use class, that's okay. But if you inherit from this class, let's say, new data manager, and then you inherit from data manager. Whoops. Well, if you inherit, you have to put it underneath, not at the top. So in here, you can override anything that say class, but you cannot override a static method. So that's the only difference. Now, in this case, it doesn't matter. You can use static, but I'm like, okay, you probably don't override this. So, okay, it's static. So here's the deal. If it's nil, I'm not saving anything. We've seen this before. So the new concept here is keyed archiver. Keyed archiver, so it's called archiving. We at iOS know how to archive all those NS data, NS other subject, other data types. But with movies, it doesn't know how to do it. So we're doing this. Keyed archiver, archive with root object. So that's from your keyed archiver. But when you take the data out, you have to call keyed unarchiver, and then you are unarchiving the object. Okay, so now I'm saying now playing archived. It's just a key. So when we look into the thing, right? I'm archiving this. It's same deal, but what is the type of this guy? It is NS data, right? So it's NS data, and I save this data, synchronize it. Any question about saving to NS user defaults? So how does it know how to archive this movie class with title, poster, and overview? Well, you have to do this. This is no longer an NS dictionary. So you have to first inherit from NS object, and you pass in the NS coding protocol. You click on this. You see that two important methods to do to override. But you also have to, because you do NS object and you provide the second init, you also have to override the primary init method. All right, so this is very simple. You tell it that if you encode me, basically you just encode my title, poster path, overview. If you have a star rating, right, you can actually have, let's say, encode int 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or some bool and some other data type. So those are first class primitive data types. In this case, we just encode object as string, and then this is how you take it out. So let's say I do it this way with internet. With internet, okay, so let's run it. So what are we doing? We load with NS user default, but now we're archiving. Let's talk about the difference. Save. So let's open this file. Oh, where do we archive? NS user default, right? So open this file one more time. So now playing archive. And notice the difference. You cannot do this anymore. Why? Over here, this is just your, what's that? NS data, NS binary. Okay, well, okay, fine, binary. And so when do I use NS user default? That's when this is becoming a bad idea. When do I use it? For simple things. When your home screen, you want to cache to make it load very fast, right? You can use it. So now it looks familiar. It looks like it will work this way, right? Good for some of the basic cache. Now, what are your other options? You can use JSON, but then you can still store your JSON to your NS user default. It's just a string, right? And you can also compress it and save it. Now, but if you start using your NS user default as the main thing, then something is wrong, right? It's supposed to be quite small. So the next thing is, let's not use NS user default, which is in this folder, library, preferences, plist. Let's save it to a file in our documents folder. So people can actually, if people install the app somewhere else, people can clear the data, people can synchronize the data, put it in documents folder. So we know the next thing is about file input and output. All right. So my data manager, I'm adding the second thing here. Let's go to data manager. I have a second method called save to file. Okay. Now this one is also interesting, related, but the only difference is I'm not saving to my user default file. I'm saving to another file. So there's a method called archive root object. Notice this is just archived as data. Of course, you can say data dot write to file or write to URL. See, write to URL. You can also post it up, right? But write to file. This write to file method exists in all your iOS data type. So an integer, a string. If you just wanted to write to a file, very easy to dump it, right? Dump it to file. So this is NS data, but you can do the same thing for NS dictionary. This write to file method is in your NS object encoding, NS coding. So that's good. You can call this and then you say, okay, write pass to file. But I have down here, there's a faster method. Archive root object, basically take the root object just like up here, but I pass in the file. So where do I write the file? iOS is not giving you too much help. You have to do it yourself in your app. Get the path to your documents folder. So it's always like this. And then you append the string and then tell it where to go. If you tell it to go somewhere else, it will not save your file. As simple as that. Apple only give you this access, right, to these guys, this folder. So that's what I do. I say I have a data file at data.archive. Let me remove this file. Okay, let me remove it. That's it. When you have a new app, this folder is empty. So I'm going to write to file. Okay, archive movies to file. Any question with this call? You're convinced that if I run data, how do I fetch data now? View did load, fetch movies. Let's fetch using file. Okay. Again, this argument is because I have this enum type, right? And I'm going to write to file. Let's look at it. Load from the internet. One more time, check. This is the internet is on. I write load to file and check this. Oh, it's not here. Right, we have to fix it. I think something is wrong with fetch movie file. Okay, I think we didn't implement it. All right, we haven't implemented this guy. So we implemented case save data. If you save it to file, I'm calling data manager dot save to file. I'm saving my movies. Looks fine, right? And now I'm saying save to file. Okay, so unknown locate. This is why it's happening, right? Okay. So let's load it, save it. Document folder data.archive. So how do I view this file? It's not easy. Well, because right now it's a binary file. Remember what we had earlier with this file? Down here in your plist, you have this part. And now I only save this binary part to the file. But there's a way for you to view this file if you want. So the tool to do that is called putil. I think plutil, right? And then you print this file. So I'm going to drag this archive file in here. That's it. Enter. It say, what does it say? Let's make it bigger. Okay, this is an archive file. Right? How helpful. I need more than that. So you can print it. Boom. This is your. You can investigate, right? This is exactly your data. All the favorite movies, they're all in here, and it passed out for you. Right? So if you write, let's say, You write some bash script, some cron job to do a few things if you want. But plutil, right? That's just to show you that you can understand the structure of this archive file. If you load this as your binary file, like head of this, let's say, if I load this in Vim, for example, right? Obviously, it's not all that interesting. There's some binary data in there, there's some text data in there. Great. So it's slightly faster. Save it there, and you can make the file bigger. But it's a binary format of plist. So remember that you have plist, which is just XML, and then you have the binary interpretation of plist. So that's, if you want to use your file input and output, that's good, but it's not fast enough. And in some cases, you want to do more. And next up, then we can use SQLite. So SQLite then can store it in binary. You can search. You can perform search function, and you can do crazy, relationship stuff with it. Okay, but it's a lot more code to write. It's much more complicated. If you stop here and you look at SQLite and you use it, that's very good for your. That's already good enough for your app. So you search for SQLite. I think there's so many CocoaPods library. I'm not going to cover them, but this is one of the best library. So let's look at the syntax. So technically, right? So this is a syntax. You include this part, and then you can perform table. So look at this one, and I need you to ask some questions here because it looks a little strange. A little strange here. Do I have the table? Does it work when I first run it? It creates a table for you, just similar to the what we have so far, archive and load it from do unarchiving. So that's good. Okay, fine. When I do let users, table users, it creates a table for me. And then the schema, right? If this column exists, then it just use it. If not, it will create it for me. So that's cool. And then I can start doing some query. Here, for example, you can say, create a news user with the name, Alice, and the email. So we can do this with movies, right? Title, overview. Now, what if you have a users table? So list of your users so far, and each user's favorite a few movies, and you have a movies table. And you use SQLite. That's when you will start hating SQLite because, like, what? I need to get the foreign key myself, and I have to go and do this query. And you look, it's already supposed to be beautiful, right? SQLite.swift is one of the more beautiful SQLite library. But as you write this, it looks super ugly, right? You have to put the data in yourself, search by user ID in your movies table, for example. Okay, so when you do that, Apple say, well, no, use core data. Core data will use SQLite for you, but it also gives you all the ways to manage the relationship. Okay, now back to that core data. So that's not all that interesting. You can create a database, you can modify the tables, you do the queries, but when you have more than one table, you start to think that this is bad if I have to manage the relationship myself. Right? SQLite, this is the most basic bare bone library that can be really fast to use. So very quickly. So this is what load data look like. If you want to write your own SQL. So, let's say a backend developer loves writing SQL statement and become an iOS developer, he will like using this. Right? But normally it's not pretty and it's scary for your friend to go in and update. All right, execute SQL. You see this, you already know this, and then you just store it as a SQLite file. That's it. Connect to the database and load the data. Save data is simpler because you just call insert query. All right. Now with SQLite Swift, it looks slightly easy to read because this looks like Swift. And you're overriding this operator, so you can pass in it's just like title colon, right? You pass in the value. So nothing crazy there, right? It looks understandable even though we don't code it. Any question about SQLite? Okay. But then core data is when we have to think of MVC in the sense of model relationships and properties. And again, JSON is a way to show you that, oh, you have movie, you have other things. But with model here, we talk about entities. So user is an entity, model is an entity. Right? So when you call entity modeling, this means you define relationships between your entities. And you can do all these things. And core data has everything you need, but the reason why we shouldn't use core data is because it has more than what you need. And it's too complicated. But we still should learn it. All right. Try to use a REST client if you can, right? All the best apps in the App Store, they use REST clients, easier to work with. And notice there's just a ton more libraries. These are the names. So let's add core data to our project. Now adding core data is not simple. There's some boilerplate to do. So core data is one of the library. So you can go to build phases, and I think you add it under, where's the list where you can, this is build setting. Click on this guy, build phases, right? Add frameworks and library here. Remember you do MapKit and all of those. Core data is one of those, right? You can add this framework. But that's not good enough, and a lot of people run into this problem. So the best way is to create a new project and copy some core data files over. So I created a new project, single view, core, just sample, include use core data. Okay, so it's already, you look at these phases, right? It already included core data. How do I know that? Import core data is one. In your app delegate, you have in core data, you have something called a context manager. Remember we have like a data manager over there that I load and save data. So there's a thing called context. With core data, when you terminate an app, or it want to save all the data so far, so you call save context. When the app go to the background, if you want, right, you can also do this, right? Save context over here. So what is save context? And you copy all these files over, right? There's a context object that has all your data loaded from the SQLite database, and then it just call that, call save on it. This is your context. So I'm just copying all these guys over, right? That's quite crazy, right? You have to do it yourself, and then notice I have to, this is the way that core data, the sample app, get the application documents directory. We can do the same thing. And one more thing to remember here is when you terminate the app, it will try to save it. All right, go back to my app. I have core data. I have to go to my delegate. I can import core data and paste that down here. All right, and notice here, I'll just do save context. It's just an error check. It's just saving this managed object, and we need to set this managed object. So what is this lazy keyword? Can someone explain? Can someone explain to me the lazy keyword here? So, no? Okay. Look, right? If I don't have lazy, this variable will be, this is a computed property. It means it's like a variable, but if you give it it's like a function, right? But you don't have the parentheses. And if you don't have lazy, this is run when you initiate it. You call init on your class. But when it does that, you don't have access to the local variables. If you do lazy, then it will ignore this guy, and then when you actually use this variable, it will run this. You can do this for your a few cases in your view controller. So in the same way, app delegate, when you run it the first time, you don't need to load your this core data managed context. And when you call this persistent coordinator, it just use some of the local variable here, and then it's return it. All right. So we need a member. Go back to this guy, and we have to find something that make this compile. Where is it? Let's fix the error. I think applications document directory is the same as my function over there, but let's just copy it. All right, can we build? Build succeed. Great. How do we save to core data? Let's see. Do I have core data here? All right. So I included core data. Let's do something first. Let's read the file that I have. Okay, let's try to read it. Okay, like read it with me. Hopefully it will make sense. We have application directory, no problem there. You print it out. This is just getting. This is quite silly. It's always an array of 1. It's the same. Maybe Apple will add more directory, but you're getting basically the documents folder, and that's always the first guy. Of course, you can just do return this dot first if you're just like a one-liner kind of person, right? Return, done. All right, next. Except, is it this one? Okay, now we'll let it be that way. Okay, next, manage object model. URL for resource core sample with extension. I think this is like model definition, model object definition, model definition. So how do we find this? This is called core sample, but what we should call is, this is called our movie. No, actually, this not movie, but the whole thing. So maybe this is movie DB. Okay. How do we do that? Under this core sample, I create a new file. And the core data, the 3 types of files. This is when you create, let's say, your class movie, right? So now it has to be a subclass of this guy, managed object. We create a data model. Oh, it already does it for us. Core sample here. So you can do it, create another one. For example, I call it movie DB, right? So this is in my core sample app. So let's go back to this app. I don't have it. Right click, new file, data model, movie DB. All right, Xcode data model ID. And when you click on this guy, this is back in the day before you have parse and realm. Everyone has to learn this because it's very powerful. So what do we have here? We have the entities, relationship, some configuration. I am adding an entity here. It's called, what should we call name our entity? What? Movie. Yes. Thank you. And what are our columns? So you can have in here basically title. This will be, you can it's just like your database stuff. So title. One more. Let's do one more. Overview. Overview. And this is so hard to use. String. And one more. Poster path. String. So let's say now we want to save when the user favorite a movie or not, right? Favorited, right? Favorited. And maybe you can call it a Boolean column. But then you also want to remember which user did it, right? So maybe you have like, user ID. What is it? So then you create another entity, and you call this entity user, and in this user you have maybe what? I can't click. What happened? Okay, name, right? Username. We're gonna just say email because that's unique. It's a string. So go back here. Now user ID is no longer, in some cases you do this foreign key, right? But here it's where you do it. Relationship. And what is this relationship? You have a user, right? And then inverse this mean you can do movie.user, and then you can do user.movie. So depends on the type of relationship, you can do many. So now, okay, well, if I have that, look at this guy. So that's kind of cool. Xcode actually built something quite useless. No one uses it, but it's nice, right? You can actually, if you build this way, you can actually submit your milestone 1. Obviously, this is a very long way to do it. So that's the structure with code data. So how does the code look? I want to cut short some time so that you can maybe discuss your group project if you have time. How does it look? Your movie class now have to subclass NS managed object. So no longer is my movie class very nicely, cleanly done like this. It looks a little clean, right? If I don't do this, I think a lot of you have done this for your project, like just a basic class. And some of you probably think about struct. What's the difference between, very quickly, what's the difference between struct and class? Has anyone thought about it? Yeah, excellent. So if you use, let's see, yeah, exactly. So example, now title, struct is quite cool. If you just use basic stuff, struct is wonderful. So let's say here I have a string. With struct, you can actually do movie, and then you can actually pass in the title. So you have a init method that give you the way to pass the title string immediately, right? If you use class, you have to do movie and then movie.title, movie.overview. Okay, that's one benefit. Second is after you have this movie thing, you say that's let's say this is title. So let's say 1, 2, 3 here. After have this movie thing, if you have another movie, right? This one it will copy everything. So it is passed by data, right? Not by reference. In class, however, you're passing by reference to the class. So this using struct is safer. Thread safe. You pass the data. It's a chunk. It's called atomic. So if you do this, if you use a lot of objects, sometimes your struct will help your code run a lot of times faster. But only if you use a lot of objects. Okay, so don't worry about it. But if you do encoding stuff, then you can't do struct anymore. You have to use class. Yeah? So struct is only for something really simple. And of course, if you want this encoding thing, of course, you can do something clever like helper, encoder, and then in here, right, you delegate the encoding job into this method. So that's a way to keep your struct inside, keep your class in, make your struct support NS encoding. That sounds like a lot of work, and maybe some of your friends read this and they're like, what are you doing, right? So I'm just explaining this, but please, if I write my project, I would just do this way. The simplest, easiest to read. Now, when you have core data, however, so now I have to write, now I'm going to name this old movie. I have to write this movie as NS manage object. Manage object. How do I do it? Type. Import core data first, right? And then NS manage object. So the cool thing now, here's the difference. Okay, not just var title, but then you say, you can actually, there are a few ways. It's crazy, but you can actually say this variable is dynamic. It's like when you change certain things in their database. it will update the title in this representation. The safer way, if you use a realm, they tell you to use this dynamic thing. And they replace core data. So don't worry about core data, just use realm. But for this guy, the recommended way is to do this, right? NS managed, and then var title. So, all right. So that's the structure for the class. Now, how do you store it in core data? You need to get the manage object context. Earlier in app delegate, you saw something like manage object context. Basically something that load your data model, that core data, like that crazy entity table. So it's here. And then you say, when you load data, you define the entity here. It's really long, but every time, instead of calling the movie class directly, you say NS entity description, entity for name, movie, and then you load it from this only one managed context. It's like your data manager. When you save data, you just call save. So save is now trivial. Load, you just need to know you have to use this call. NS entity description, entity for name movie, entity for name user data. Right? So that's relationship. You see how this is without using NS manage object movie that I just did. Okay, just look at this first. Set value, and then you see it's very low level, but it's very obvious what it's doing. Insert new object for entity name. That's when you insert. This is when you get the model, right? And you get the data. This is when you insert each movie. Looks fine, right? Let's say movie details. Let's say for each movie you have more records about maybe reviews and other things. So, but if you call it, I hope I have the slides. If you do it this way, if you do it this NS manage object way, then you can just instead of set value here, you can just do movie open parens close parens. That's the first line that NS manage object does it for you, and then down here movie, right, dot title. So that's very nice. A layer of it's mapping this entity class to the database. So let's take a break. The next step, I will put this online, and then you will implement this load data and save data using Realm. Has anyone used Realm? Yes, right? Okay, so it's easy for you today, but basically I'm I'm going to push. Oh, this is a lot of code to push. Maybe I should delete. All right, take a break, and I'll push the data and then do Realm just to see like it's super easy to do and it's quite fun.